Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. There was a big fight taking place in Copenhagen between Mikkel Kessler and Allan Green. They're fighting at light heavyweight 175 pounds. Right now, keep in mind, Kessler has only lost to two fighters his entire career. Joe Calzaghe, a definite Hall of Famer when he's eligible, and Andre Ward, who I believe is fighting at a Hall of Fame level, the winner of the Super 6 tournament. But let me say something that people in mainstream media can't say, because keep in mind, they want the rights to televise fights like this one. They want access, right? They want to be able to interview the fighters. Here, I'm just a bloke online trying to make money gambling and sharing my research conclusions with you in exchange for some advertising dollars from sponsors, right? In my opinion, both of these fighters are overrated. Neither of these guys is defensively gifted. I know Allan Green has been talking some great smack. I love his trash talk. Unfortunately, he hasn't backed it up, right? He was talking about how the Super 6 was going to be easy. In the Super 6, he arguably lost every round to Andre Ward. Then, of course, he got stopped by Glenn Johnson in what has turned out to be Glenn Johnson's last great performance, right? Now he's saying that Mikkel Kessler isn't that good defensively. I'll buy that. The problem is, the implication is that Allan Green is that good defensively. If you believe that he might be, I would encourage you to look at the later rounds of his loss to one-handed Edison Miranda, right? In fact, forget that fight. Look at his last fight, Sebastian Demers. Now keep in mind, in that fight, one of the judges somehow had Allan Green winning every round. Rather than rely on the judges' scorecards, all I ask you to do is to look at the last 3 rounds of that 10-round fight. Understand that Demers had lost his previous 2 fights. And I want you to just count the times Allan Green is hit flush. Now keep in mind, he faded late against Edison Miranda. I thought he was fading against Sebastian Demers. This fight isn't 10 rounds. This fight is 12 rounds. Allan Green's defense seems to last, in my opinion, for about 4 or 5 rounds. After that, he starts to get hit. He's not particularly mobile. He's a fighter who has a very good, and it is good, long jab. The problem is he doesn't really move that well. His defense isn't that great. And unless he takes you out relatively early, he does have a punch. Unless he takes you out relatively early, he tends to get distracted. He tends to fade in the middle of fights. He was actually doing well against Glenn Johnson early. Then the fight got away from him. That seems to be a common theme with Allan Green. Whereas Mikkel Kessler, by contrast, and I know this will sound hard, but hey, this is the online community. This is not the much more polite mainstream media. Mikkel Kessler, quite frankly, isn't that good defensively and has a problem with lateral movement. He himself doesn't move well laterally, right? He gets hit. Forget about the eye injuries that he suffered against Andre Ward. And I know after the fight he was trying to claim, after getting owned for that fight, that he somehow lost because of fouls. I thought that was sad. I thought that was a fighter either lying to the public or lying to himself, right? Maybe unintentionally, but that's the way it looked to me. Well, forget the Andre Ward fight. What's his excuse on having one eye look like shredded meat at the end of the Carl Froch fight? Right? Let me also point out, too, that there's a moment in that Carl Froch fight, and I'm sure Carl Froch knows this in his heart, where Carl Froch hit Mikkel Kessler. Kessler fell to the canvas, rolled over, got back up, and somehow the referee called that a slip. Now, I know on the replay it looked like Mikkel Kessler's feet got tangled up. Let me just say, that's what happens to fighters when they're on the way to getting knocked down. I thought that was a knockdown. You count that as a knockdown. That Froch fight gets a lot closer. More importantly, as you watch that Froch fight, compare and contrast what Mikkel Kessler is doing in that Froch fight, and Kessler's almost on rails. He's back, he comes forward. He's back, he comes forward. Contrast that robotic movement to Andre Ward's fight against Froch, where Ward showed you a whole different ensemble of skills. Fluidity, left hands to the body, movement, capitalizing on the intervals between Carl Froch's punches. Keep in mind, Carl is a lot of things, but great hand speed is not his forte, right? All I'm saying is you see the limitations of Mikkel Kessler when you compare his performance against Froch with Andre Ward's performance against Froch. Kessler doesn't move that well. He doesn't defend himself that well. He's very predictable, right? Dare I say, if either of these guys faces Chad Dawson, I would take Chad Dawson without hesitation, and I would expect Dawson to beat both of these guys by a wider margin than he beat Bernard Hopkins. In fact, let's talk about Hopkins. Hopkins is almost 50, and just understand that I believe Bernard Hopkins beats both of these guys. When you can't fight inside, and I've seen no indication that either of these guys is a great fighter inside, you're going to have problems against Bernard Hopkins. So this is for the WBC Silver Championship, right? An interim title. Let me just say, the fight is in Kessler's backyard. I do feel Kessler has the hand speed advantage on Allan Green. Green, who did look awful in the Super 6, is actually a better fighter than that. I think Green has a puncher's chance, right? He has a puncher's chance. But I just don't see any way that Allan Green gets a decision over Mikkel Kessler in Denmark. So the bet I'm recommending is Mikkel Kessler to win the fight. He does have the faster hands. He is aggressive. Allan Green, in my opinion, and again, this is online. We keep it a little bit realer here than they do in the real world. I think Allan Green has a problem with, we'll call it, mental stamina in fights. In other words, he seems locked in. By the way, other fighters have a problem with mental stamina. As I was telling someone earlier today, I think even Chad Dawson seems to get distracted as a fight progresses. He has to be reeled back in by his corner. I believe the same thing applies to Allan Green. He seems to be focused for the first 4 or 5 rounds when he has his defense going. Then he seems to start to fall apart. His mind seems to drift. The intensity seems to dissipate. Mikkel Kessler doesn't have that problem. He's always locked in from start to finish. The problem I have with Kessler, though, is, in my opinion, he seems a bit limited. In other words, if Andre Ward and Chad Dawson are top of the food chain at 168 and 175, and we'll talk about their possible head-to-head matchup in a different video. right? If they're top of the food chain at 168 and 175, let's just say that while they're the A students, I view Mikkel Kessler as more of a B plus student, right? Allan Green is more of a B minus, B student. I'm expecting Kessler to win this fight, but Allan Green has a puncher's chance in the first 5 to 6 rounds. We'll give him the first half of the fight. Okay? So the bet I'm recommending is Mikkel Kessler to win, straddled against Allan Green by KO. I'll be surprised, quite frankly, if this fight makes it to the 11th round. I'm expecting fireworks, and given the defensive lapses of both fighters, I'm expecting somebody to get hurt in this one. The outcome I don't see happening, the outcome I would eliminate in my betting portfolio, is Allan Green to win this fight by decision. I just don't see that happening in Denmark. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online and visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for watching.